Talk about perfect timing. I'm sure he was writing this book some time ago, but it's released now in the middle of all of this. I'm talking about Texas Senator Ted Cruz's book, One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. Senator, you must have timed that, knowing these events were going to transpire. Very good to have you. Thank you for coming.
Neil, it's great to join you. The timing was a bit of serendipity. I wrote the book this spring and summer on COVID lockdown down in Houston, sat in my living room, pulled out the laptop and wrote it. Obviously, I didn't know there was going to be a Supreme Court vacancy in October. But what I did know is there was, of course, going to be a presidential election in November. And in my view, the single most important issue on the ballot is the judiciary and the Supreme Court. And what this book does, One Vote Away, is it lays out the constitutional liberties that are hanging in the balance. Each chapter of the book addresses a different constitutional liberty, one on free speech, one on religious liberty, one on the Second Amendment. And it tells war stories. It brings the reader inside the court, behind the scenes, on the big landmark cases, many of which I personally helped litigate. And it's designed to bring them alive. You know, a lot of people know the Supreme Court's important, but they don't necessarily understand what's going on, what it's about. And this is designed to be readable.
You get into the notion that so many crucial decisions have been one-vote decisions. The vast majority actually are much wider than that, but they get the attention. But I'm wondering here, because you've expressed your doubts in the past and relayed them about, Judges Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, how can we be so sure that in Amy Barrett we have a true concern? I know you had telegraphed your concerns about those judges, now justices, and their conservative bona fides, but then how here can we know for sure with Amy Barrett?
So the last chapter of the book is entirely focused on Supreme Court nominations and how to get them right or how we've gotten them wrong. If you look at history,
right, Democrats
are very good at this. They get almost 100% of their nominees vote exactly as Democrats want them to in almost every big case. Republicans are terrible at this. We bat less than 500, and many of the worst judicial activists in history were put on the bench by Republicans. People like Earl Warren and Bill Brennan and John Paul Stevens and David Souter, Harry Blackmun, the author of Roe versus Wade, all of those were Republican appointees. And what I do is examine what worked and what didn't, and there's a pattern. If you look at those justices who stayed faithful to their oath, people like Antonin Scalia, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, my former boss, Chief Justice William Rehnquist, they all had served in the executive. They all had defended conservative principles, defended the Constitution. And here's the critical piece, Neil. They all had faced withering press criticism. They'd been pounded and stayed strong. That's what I'm most interested in. Is
do you think Judge Barrett is up to that withering criticism and will deliver the goods that maybe some other justices you pointed at have not?
So, look, I hope so. She has an impeccable academic credential. She's been an academic. She's been a Court of Appeals judge. Personally, I would like to see a longer record as a proven constitutionalist on the court. But I think all of the indicia are encouraging about Judge Barrett right now.
All right. Now, this non-answer we're getting from the Democratic ticket, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, as to whether they would agree with some of their cohorts to pack the court in light of this. What do you think?
I think there is a reason they're refusing to answer it, because the answer is unequivocally yes, yes, yes. I talked yesterday to both the president and the vice president, and I congratulated the vice president on a fantastic debate 2 days ago, where he put the question not once, twice, he put it 4 times to Kamala Harris, and she consistently refused to answer it, just like Joe Biden did the week before. The reason is simple. Their hard left base wants to do this. If they win, they will pack the court, which will destroy its independence, which will make it a political institution even worse than it is now. But they recognize that is a wildly unpopular decision, so they don't want to admit it to the American people. And I got to say, there's something weird about Joe Biden standing up and saying, I'm not going to tell the voters before you vote whether I'm willing to destroy one of the pillars of the Constitution and Bill of Rights, one of the pillars of our society, There's something fundamentally dishonest to the voters about it. It's because their answer to that, as I said, is yes.
Or it could be they're sitting on a lead and don't want to ruin anything. In fact, their lead in the polls is so substantial that even you said earlier, Senator, that the GOP could face a bloodbath of Watergate proportions on Election Day if voters aren't feeling optimistic about the economy. I went on to say that people are very, very angry. Do you see that changing in the next 3 weeks or so?
Well, what I said earlier was that the election is incredibly volatile. So one outcome that is possible is a bloodbath election where Democrats win everything. I think it is still possible that the president gets reelected with a big margin and that Republicans keep the Senate and take the House. And I think it depends on, number one,
you think the president could win by a big margin, even when you look at, and again, polls are always suspect, as you remind me, Senator, but the trend is not his friend. In fact, it's widening, not only nationally, but even the battleground states.
So I think the hard left is going to show up no matter what. I think they hate the president. They're going to crawl over broken glass to vote. The big question is, does everyone else show up and vote? And that's actually why I wrote the book, One Vote Away, is it's designed, if you're a voter at home and for one reason or another, maybe you're not thrilled with Donald Trump. You might not like what he says or what he tweets, and you're trying to think, gosh, do I vote or not? This book is designed to make the case to you that if you care about your fundamental liberties, if you want to preserve your religious liberty, if you want to preserve your right to free speech, if you want to preserve the Second Amendment, there are 4 votes that have been on the Supreme Court to take those rights away. And if Joe Biden wins, we are facing a loss of our fundamental liberties. And this book is designed to make that very real by helping you understand just how close the court is to destroying those rights. And I'll tell you, Neil, it's been amazing. The book has become the #1 bestseller in the country on Amazon. And I think that's because people want to understand what's going on with the court. What are the stakes in this election? What are the stakes in the confirmation battle over Judge Barrett? And this book, you don't have to be a lawyer to enjoy this book.
You also get into a lot of interesting behind-the-scenes stuff there that makes the stuff we're seeing today seem pale by comparison. But very quickly, while I have you here, the reason I mentioned polls and everything else, the president said something kind of revealing today, maybe tweeting it more to the point, on Nancy Pelosi's efforts to look at the transfer of power in the 25th Amendment, essentially saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, Senator, that's her way to help Kamala Harris, which almost seemed to me to indicate, has he given up on this thing? Does he think Biden and Harris are going to win, and Democrats are going to prepare for a possible transfer of power to grease the skids for President Harris? I mean, do you sense it when you've talked to the president that he's losing faith he can pull this reelection off?
I don't sense that at all. As I said, I talked to him yesterday. I talked to him 3 days ago when he got home from the hospital. He sounded strong. He sounded in good spirits. I think he's prepared to fight. I think a lot of folks are trying to write off the election, but you know what? They did that 4 years ago also.
No, you're right about
the Pelosi amendment thing is just a political stunt on her part. I mean, since the day the Democrats got the majority in the House, their only priority has been attacking the president, impeaching the president, trying to destroy the president, and this is just a political stunt to do that.
All right, let me talk. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your dust up with Mark Cuban, of course, the Mavericks owner. You had called him out, or it seemed like you were calling him out, when you looked at the NBA Finals and the bad ratings they were having, and saying a lot of the social justice messaging in a lot of games might have been, a ratings downer. And he responded that a U.S. senator with 3 NBA teams and in the state and employing thousands of people, and he's rooting for their business to do poorly. He called you full of what? What do you say?
Well, to quote the bard, methinks she doth protest too much. And Mark Cuban gets very upset and he yells and screams and hurls expletives when he knows he's in the wrong. And in this instance, I love the NBA. I'm a diehard Houston Rockets fan. I've been my entire life. And it breaks my heart to see the NBA. I think they are doing enormous damage to their business by just insulting many of their fans, by turning basketball games. No one wants to turn on a sports game and hear this lefty political lecture, which, by the way, is completely self-righteous and doesn't actually address any of the issues. If they wanted to do something on racial inequality, it'd be great to see the NBA step in and raise money for scholarships for low-income kids to have school choice, but they wouldn't do that. Instead,
well, have you guys talked, after all the online back and forth, have you buried the hatchet, or is it still quite sharp and still very much a hatchet?
Oh, look, to be honest, I don't know Mark Cuban personally. I've never met the guy. He tweets nasty things at me. My actually initial comment was about the NBA generally, and it was sad to see the damage they were doing to the sport. I mean, their viewership is down 50%. And Cuban has sort of made a pattern of wanting to attack and throw bombs at me, and that's fine. I get it's a very political league, but it's not good. It's not good for the viewers, and it's not good for the league. I think sports should be fun to watch, and much of their political commentary is very superficial and uninformed, and that's part of why you don't necessarily tune in to see a basketball owner or whoever lecturing you on politics. You want to have a discussion about police reform, you want to have a discussion about racial justice, I'm happy to have a long substantive one, but that's not what Mark Cuban's looking at. He's just throwing bombs, and frankly,
all right,
he's very sensitive because the NBA is simultaneously so in bed with the Chinese Communist government that they're unable to say even a word about China, but they're glad to criticize and
we'll see.
attack.
We'll see. It could also be the very, very long playoff season. It never ends. It just never ends. That could be a separate issue. But Senator Ted Cruz, it's very good having you. Be well. Be safe. Thank you again.